Love. A word that many people understand in different ways. For some it is care and support, for others it is passion and madness. And for me, love was Bella. We met in high school when we were still teenagers. The meetings, the first timid kisses, the long conversations on the phone until deep into the night, we had it all between us. We seemed inseparable. But, as is often the case in life, we had to go through the ordeal of distance. When we enrolled in different colleges, our meetings dwindled to rare weekends. It seemed like this wouldn't break our bond, but I was wrong. One day, my old acquaintances asked me about her weekend plans. They laughed and looked at each other as if they knew something that was unknown to me. I was wary. "What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling something unpleasant brewing inside. "You know Bella's a sociable girl. And everyone in town knows that she's not too choosy when it comes to the company of guys. She likes to spread her legs in front of all the guys." Their words pierced me like sharp knives. Was it really true? Had Bella, the very girl with whom I shared my dreams and future, betrayed me like this? I couldn't live with this unknown horror. So I got in my car and drove to her place in the neighboring town. The drive was long and agonizing, thoughts swarming in my head, giving me no rest. As soon as I arrived, I knew I couldn't just make love to her like I usually did. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. When I walked into her room, she greeted me happily, but noticed my tension. I didn't hesitate. "Bella," I began, trying to keep my voice low. "I heard that you're sleeping with other guys while we're not together. Is that true?" Her face changed dramatically. She clearly hadn't expected such a question. "Yes, Lucas," she answered without averting her gaze. "I'm having the time of my life. We're not officially dating, we're not married, and I'm not wearing a ring on my finger. Then what could you possibly have against me?" Her words hit me in the chest. All that love, all those feelings I had for her, began to fall apart. But I was thinking. I began, trying to collect my thoughts. "I thought you were faithful to me, that our relationship meant the same thing to you as it did to me." She shrugged. "Look, Lucas," she said with barely perceptible irritation. "You were my first man, you opened the world to me. But you didn't make me do anything. I decided on my own that I wanted to try it all, that I wanted to live the life I wanted." The word stuck in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But I didn't force you to sleep with other men and ruin our relationship," I exclaimed, desperately trying to figure out when things had gone wrong. She shrugged her shoulders. "Look, Lucas," she said with barely perceptible irritation. "You were my first man, you opened the world to me. But you didn't make me do anything. I decided on my own that I wanted to try it all, that I wanted to live the life I wanted." The word stuck in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But I didn't force you to sleep with other men and ruin our relationship," I exclaimed, desperate to understand when things had gone wrong. The day I made the decision to diversify my life with other women, or rather, to accept the most wrong decision in my life, which Bella offered me, it seemed to me that I had found freedom and discovered new facets of myself. However, I soon realized that it was only an illusion. Yes, my college life became fulfilling after what Bella and I had decided. Hallie, modest and shy, brought a tenderness and quietness to our encounters that sometimes seemed more arousing than any passions. Kiera, on the other hand, was bright and bold, her thirst for risk and passion stirring something primal in me. Louie, with her fiery nature and unyielding temper, was like a storm from which there was no hiding. But the more I immersed myself in these fleeting liaisons, the more I was haunted by a sense of emptiness. I began to wonder if I was destroying all that was between me and Bella. We had sworn our loyalty to each other, that we would build our future on love and mutual respect. But with each new experience, I felt myself drifting farther and farther away from that vow. Time passed, and as Bella and I approached the end of our training, I realized that our experiments had done us good. When I put the ring on her finger, I was sure that we now knew everything we needed to know about each other to build a strong marriage. Our intimate relationship had become fulfilling, and we knew how to pleasure each other. We thought we were ready for a life together, but as it turned out, love and intimacy were only part of the picture. The first year of our marriage went smoothly, but the rhythm of our lives began to change. There were new responsibilities, stress at work, and we could find time for each other less and less often. On one of those days, Bella said her friend from college was coming into town and offered to invite her to join us. I agreed, though in the back of my mind I had my doubts. When they showed up on our doorstep, I sensed something had changed. Bella was lively, her eyes shining with joy, but her friend, she immediately displeased me. Her manners were rude, she behaved defiantly, and her attitude towards her husband left a lot to be desired. She spoke to him like a subordinate, giving orders and not noticing his feelings. This struck me as odd and even a little disturbing. When Bella asked me how I felt about her friend, I didn't want to hurt her. I knew she valued her friends and probably saw them as an example in some ways. So I lied, saying they looked good together. But the lie was weighing on me. I didn't want to fight with Bella, but the feeling of falsehood was growing stronger. Every day I thought more and more about how we'd started our marriage, and that every step we'd taken, every decision we'd made, had consequences. Maybe it was the connections we both had before we got married that shaped us into who we are now, but as it turns out, they didn't provide all the answers. Marriage is not only about love and passion, but also about being honest with each other, even when the truth can hurt. But was I ready for that honesty? Or would I continue to hide behind a veil of lies, trying to maintain the illusion of a perfect marriage? That night, as Bella and her friend sat around the table, discussing their business and laughing, I felt an invisible wall being erected between us. I was sitting next to her, but my thoughts were far away. I was tormented by doubts, and I realized that I was beginning to lose control of what was most important to me, our relationship. I didn't know what to think. Everything seemed fine between us, but this talk, her friend Lizzie. What does she really think of me? What does she say when I'm not around? At that moment, I realized I couldn't turn a blind eye to what was going on anymore. I decided to find out the truth. The idea of tapping Bella's phone came out of the blue, but was easier to implement than I thought. Over the next week, I witnessed several short conversations and one longer one lasting about an hour. I wasn't an expert on women's conversations, but I sensed something wasn't right here. Lizzie was giving advice to my wife, but it was all so veiled that I couldn't understand what exactly was being discussed. The fear that Bella might be cheating on me settled in my mind, and that fear grew every day. It was 2 days after that long conversation, and I returned home, still digesting what I had heard. As soon as I opened the door, my heart sank. Standing in the doorway was Bella. She was wearing black lace lingerie, black stockings, perfectly styled hair, and bright red shoes. Her image was like something out of my wildest fantasies. She looked so seductive that I immediately started to get a stirring in my pants. I couldn't take my eyes off her. "Hi, honey." Her voice was soft and low, as if she knew the effect she was having on me. My head spun, and for a moment I forgot about all my suspicions, everything I'd heard over the past few days. In that moment, it was just the two of us, and I was ready to drown in her arms, forgetting all my worries. But there was still that spark of doubt inside me that kept me from relaxing completely. Thinking back to her words to Lizzie, I couldn't help but wonder what was behind it. Why now, at this very moment, had she decided to surprise me like this? Was it a genuine impulse, or was she trying to make amends? That night with Bella was like another dimension. We made love with such passion, as if we wanted to erase all the boundaries between us, to dissolve into each other. It was like a storm that takes over and doesn't let go. We plunged into this whirlwind again and again, forgetting about everything, about time, about doubts, about what awaited me the next day. The next day I couldn't think of anything else but those recordings that remained unlistened to. The work dragged on for an agonizingly long time, and I could feel the anxiety growing inside me. All I wanted was to get home and find out what Bella had talked to Lizzie about. I knew I'd have a chance. Bella had gone to her yoga class and the house would be empty. When I finally made it home and started the tapes, the first few minutes brought nothing new. The same familiar conversations about diet, health, fitness. But then, I heard Lizzie's voice and my heart sank. She was telling Bella about her night with two men, about how her husband Brian looked at it. I sat still, as if paralyzed, feeling everything inside collapse. Lizzie's words were tearing me apart, each sentence hitting me. And then, like a knife to my heart, I heard Bella's voice. Yes, I understand, but I want to try so badly, too, and I don't know how to make my husband obedient. Those words pierced me like a red-hot iron. I didn't know how to react, what to think. In an instant, the world I had worked so hard to build in my head crumbled. Everything between us, our passion, our nights. It all seemed like a lie now, an illusion that hid her dissatisfaction, her desire for something more, something she thought I couldn't give her. I'd been prepared for a lot of things, but to hear it from Bella, from the woman I'd lived with for so many years, from whom I'd never expected such a betrayal, it was unbearable. My mind was all jumbled up. Memories of the night she had behaved so passionately now seemed like a perverse game. It turned out she didn't just want me, she dreamed of something else, and I was just part of her fantasy. What should I do with this information? What do I do? I sat in the dark room, unmoving, as if time had stopped. Pain and rage struggled inside me. I wanted to talk to her right away, to ask her what it all meant, but I realized I wasn't ready. I had to think, sort through my feelings, and figure out what to do next. It all fell into place now. My wife, the woman I trusted with my life, wasn't just unfaithful, she was building a world around me where I was just a backdrop for her game. A weakling, a submissive servant, a jerk, that's exactly what she wanted me to be. And she didn't even realize that I'd figured it all out, that I'd uncovered her plans. When I heard the part of the conversation where Lizzie asked about Sam and whether he had fulfilled his commitment, something inside me finally broke. Bella replied that everything had gone according to plan, but had been delayed because they'd agreed to make love while his wife was pregnant. Those words echoed painfully in my head. I no longer felt shock, pain, or rage, just cold, calculating determination. I realized that Bella wasn't just unfaithful. She's addicted to other men giving her what she thinks I can't give her. She had gotten herself into this quagmire, and now, even if she wanted to, she couldn't get out. My thoughts became crystal clear. I had to play by her rules, let her feel that she was winning, that I was turning into the weak, submissive husband she dreamed of. Let her think that she was in control, that she was in charge, that I was turning a blind eye to her adventures and willing to put up with her depraved desires. I began to cautiously change my behavior. I began to be compliant, to show visible weakness, as if I was losing confidence in myself. I told her that I realized how important her desires were to me, that I was ready to support her in everything, even in what I had previously considered unacceptable. Whenever she discussed her affairs with Lizzie, I left the wire on, but I didn't react violently to what I heard. There was rage inside me, hidden under a mask of cold determination. I let that rage spill over into our intimacy, and it was reflected in the way I treated Bella. For the first time in a long time, I didn't hold back my cruelty. I wasn't afraid to be rough. I clutched her neck harder, spanking her, leaving red marks on her skin. Instead of fear or outrage, she responded with more desire, as if my rough touches only fueled her passion. In that moment, I realized that Bella was enjoying the power she thought she had over me. After our brutal act of lovemaking, she, with her breath still ragged, suddenly asked me, "Lucas, do you ever think back to those women you were with in college? Would you like to meet them?" This question caught me off guard. I realized she was testing me, wanting to see if I had the same desires as her. But I wasn't going to play by her rules. "No, Bella," I said, trying to make my voice sound convincing. "I love only you, and I don't want to betray our connection. But sometimes," I paused, watching her reaction, "I think about seeing you with someone else, like calling Kira and having a threesome." Her face changed instantly. Her smile slid away, and there was a twinkle of displeasure in her eyes. "What?" Her voice became serious, almost cold. "How can you say that? Are you serious?" She looked confused, perhaps confronted for the first time with the fact that I could display the same desire she was allowing herself left and right. "It's okay for you to sleep with other men, but if I do it, it's impossible." "Strange logic, Bella," I said, trying not to give away the irritation in my voice. Her reaction made me wonder how much she was trying to maintain control. Apparently she was used to the idea that I was weak, that I would put up with her cheating, but the idea that I could afford something like that made her afraid. Perhaps she was afraid that if I did, it would shatter her illusion of power over me. She leaned back against the pillows, avoiding my gaze. "Lucas," she began after a pause, "do you realize that this kind of thing could ruin our marriage? We can't afford to let other people into our lives." Her words were lies, veiled with concern for our future, but I already knew her true colors. She just didn't want to lose control. She could betray me, but the thought that I could do the same made her terrified. "I don't want to ruin anyone," I replied calmly. "I just thought that if you could afford to have fun, maybe I could, too." Her eyes sparkled, not with passion, but with anger. "I didn't know you were capable of this." Her voice turned icy. I smiled. "Bella, there comes a time in our lives when we have to be honest with each other. I thought that's what you wanted." She was silent, mulling over my words. In that moment, I realized that I had upset her balance. I had become not just a husband to control, but a threat to her. She didn't know what to expect from me next. Now everything was falling into place. My wife, who had been building a world of illusion around me, began to realize that her control was waning. So I decided that I would continue this game until she realized that she had lost everything. Now it's my turn to make the rules. I woke up the next morning with a firm decision to put an end to this painful game. The rage still boiled inside, but I knew I couldn't let myself snap. I had to act coolly, clearly, to convey to Bella that I wasn't going to put up with her manipulations any longer. I made breakfast, trying to hold back all those words that were churning inside. When Bella appeared in the kitchen, fresh and confident, I invited her to sit down at the table. "Bella," I began, trying to keep my tone calm, "we need to talk." She sat down across from me, looking at me warily. Her eyes flashed with a kind of curiosity mixed with a touch of anxiety. She didn't expect me to start the day with a serious conversation. "I know you want to make me your puppet," I continued, looking her straight in the eye. "A servant who will agree to anything you want, even if it includes other men." Bella flinched, but kept quiet, clearly not expecting me to start so bluntly. "But that's not going to happen," I raised my voice, feeling my emotions begin to break through my control. "Enough. I'm sick of you wiping your feet on me, taking my feelings for weakness. If you do that to me next, you know I'll be seeing other women too. And, believe me, they're already writing to me themselves." She turned pale. To say that she almost fell off her chair at that moment is not to say anything. Her face was flaming with anger and rage, her eyes were throwing lightning bolts. It must have been a low blow to her, and, more importantly, she knew I wasn't kidding. For the first time in a long time, Bella couldn't find the words. She sat across from me, fists clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. Her breathing came in quick gasps, and I could see the tension taking over her completely. "Lucas," she finally said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger, Do you seriously think you can talk to me like that? That you can threaten me?" "It's not a threat, Bella," I replied coldly. "It's a fact. If you keep treating me like this, I won't stand by. I deserve respect, and I'm not going to stand for your manipulation. If you value our marriage, then stop trying to subjugate me." Her gaze darted around the room, as if she were looking for a way out of this situation, but there was no answer. She was well aware that she could no longer manipulate me like she had before. And maybe in that moment she realized how much she cared about me, if the thought of being with another woman made her tremble with jealousy. "Okay," she said finally, her voice shaking, but she tried to make it firm. "Let's be true to each other. We'll see what happens next." That was the end of the conversation, and we sat down to breakfast in silence. Bella was absorbed in her thoughts, and I in mine. We were each trying to make sense of what had happened and how it would affect our relationship. I knew this was just the beginning. I was to watch her behavior, to see how she would behave in the future. But one thing was clear: Bella now realized that I was no longer the man she thought I was. I had made it clear to her that I was ready to defend my dignity, and she would no longer be able to control me as she pleased. How she would behave from here on out, time would tell. But I was ready for anything.